So, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our third part of the inter-meeting of this week. And I'm happy that we can now discuss a little bit intensively the trade policy of the European Union. I'm glad that our Commissioner Maros Sefcovic is here with us. Maros, welcome to our meeting, and thanks a lot for having the opportunity to discuss with you for 2 hours. So we have, I guess, a lot of remarks and questions, because since our last structural dialogue, which took place on the 20th of March 2025, so a long time ago, I guess the world of trade has changed a little bit. And this roller coaster from the United States, specifically also this Greenland operation and some others, but also the aggressive position of China in some elements and some trade policy legislation. We finished the GSP, for example, and also we concluded some trade agreements. So I guess there's a big change between March 2025 and now. And therefore, I'm really happy that you are here and that you will give us now an input regarding your perspective and also a little bit what the plan of the Commission for the next year is. And I give immediately the floor to you for around about 15 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, dear Chair, dear Bernd, honourable members, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, it's a pleasure to be here in front of the European Parliament Committee on International Trade for this structured dialogue. I even wouldn't feel that it was the year since we've met, because the time been so dynamic and so many things that has happened. And I really would like to start by thanking you for working together on what I would describe turbocharged trade policy agenda of the European Union. So indeed, there is a lot of things to discuss, because international trade continues to lie at the epicenter of Europe's competitiveness and ability to act on geopolitical stage. Our world-leading network of free trade agreements, our work to open new markets, and our support for fair and rules-based trade all help us defend European interests in this challenging world. Today's global trade landscape is fast-moving, and I would like to use this opportunity to provide a brief overview of where we stand on various files from my point of view. First, as you just suggested, dear Chair, as regards the United States, our #1 trading partner, we always knew our relationship would require careful management. We have faced challenges recently, but through our firm and cool-headed approach with unity and continuous engagement, we have moved forward. The deal concluded in July last year, and the joint statement have restored to a great extent much-needed certainty and stability. This was of a key importance for our businesses and for our workers, and I would say also for the entire global trading system. Last Friday, the US Supreme Court ruled that the President cannot impose tariffs under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA. In response, President Trump enacted temporary import surcharge of 10% on top of existing most favored nation duties until 24th of July, while maintaining exemptions on important sectors like aircraft, pharmaceutical, and energy products. 232 tariffs on cars, steel, and aluminium, trucks, lumber remain unaffected. Since the ruling, I have been in constant touch with my counterparts, and they both reassured me they stand by the deal with the European Union. Both reassured me they stand by the deal with the European Union. The US Trade Representative Jamieson Greer has also said this publicly. At the same time, we are discussing the ways to address the issue of steel and aluminium derivatives by making it more practical and productive, and I hope we can find solutions in this matter very soon. As them, we must also remain committed to our deal. I understand your decision to delay this morning's votes on the relevant regulations, but it is imperative we keep the process moving forward in implementing our commitments under joint statement. A vote in plenary in March must remain our target, under the condition, of course, that we get more clarity from the United States. There are also other positive strands of cooperation emerging with the US. For instance, we are negotiating our bilateral memorandum of understanding on the critical raw minerals and working on plurilateral initiative on critical raw minerals supply chains. So we'll continue to engage at all levels. Our strategy here is clear. We stay united, composed, committed to our deal, while expanding our network of trade agreements with other trading partners, and I will continue seeking the clarity we need and informing you transparently as I have done so far. Turning to China, where we are seeing an acceleration and strengthening of trends of concerns to us. First, China's ever-growing dominance in key sectors, including those at the higher end of the value chain. China's manufacturing output reportedly already matches that of the EU and US combined, with a global share of 30% and growing. Second, an increasing imbalance in our bilateral trade, with the EU's trade deficit with China reaching 360 billion euros in 2025. Third, the decreasing market share of EU companies in China, with their exports and investments in third countries being displaced by their Chinese competitors. Fourth, China's ability to use our dependencies in strategic sectors as evidenced by the imposition of export controls in the critical raw materials sector by Beijing in the recent years. And our response continues to be threefold. We continue to engage with the Chinese side, and here too I'm in constant touch with my counterpart, Minister Wang Wentao. We are currently discussing prospects for high-level engagement this year, while keeping in mind that any such engagement should be results-driven. Furthermore, we should look into more effective and efficient autonomous trade and industrial action where merited as per the economic security strategy. Lastly, we must accelerate diversification through new free trade agreements and deeper partnerships and like-minded partners. We need these countries to effectively break off our dependencies on China and open new trade and investment possibilities for our companies, and I will come to this point a little bit later on. The economic security strategy, which we published in December, reflects a paradigm shift, moving to a more proactive and targeted use of our toolbox. It also outlines the urgency of the EU, its member states, and importantly, industry, to systematically factor in a security premium to reduce vulnerabilities and enhance our overall security. This reinforced approach is designed to ensure that the EU remains competitive and able to secure supply chains in the changing geopolitical landscape. Our work to diversify our trade is another key element of this effort and is yielding much fruit. The deal with Mercosur region will create a unique regional bloc-to-bloc free trade area of over 700 million people. The required protections were built into the deal with the passing of the bilateral safeguard regulation offering assurances to the farmers. I think Parliament's decision to refer the deal to the ECJ was unfortunate, not least because it may delay parliamentary scrutiny, your scrutiny, for up to 2 years. The Commission and myself personally remain committed to seeing Mercosur ratified and implemented quickly. Every year we lose is a year of lost trade, lost jobs and lost economic opportunities that we badly need for our competitiveness and prosperity. Let me be specific. Between 2021 and 2025, the EU would have benefited from extra 183 billion euros in exports and 291 billion euros in GDP if the agreement had been in force. I hope that very soon I will bring to your table for a final process of signature and ratification free trade agreement with Mexico. If you allow me to continue on the recently agreed FTA with India, which will help us to open up the world's fourth largest economy, traditionally marked by high tariffs and significant non-tariff barriers to the EU. The deal liberalizes 97% of our trade, 90% would go to zero, with 4 billion euros per year in tariff savings. It opens huge opportunities to expand trade that is currently commercially unattainable. In addition, the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement with Indonesia offers EU exporters the chance to expand and find new markets, liberalizing 98% of trade with the largest economy in Southeast Asia. Looking ahead, talks with Australia are ongoing. I hosted my Australian counterpart earlier this month, and Commissioner Hansen joined us to discuss the most sensitive agricultural elements of the proposed deal. We were able to make good overall progress, and further technical work is now underway to bridge the remaining divergences. Talks with the Philippines are also advancing, and we hope that it may be possible to conclude still this year. The latest round with Thailand was of a more technical nature given the recent elections there, but we see a strong commitment from the Thai side to move forward. A round also took place last week with Malaysia as we look to exchange market access offers later this year. While a round earlier this month with the UAE has allowed for further exchanges in a number of important areas with a view to narrowing the differences on key outstanding issues. We also continue our work to forge closer relations with the CPTPP, as well as to diversify our offers to third countries through digital trade agreements, CFAs and CTIPs. Indeed, next week we will see the first government to business meeting in South Africa as part of the implementation of our first CTIP. The EU's active trade agenda also signals our firm commitment to rules-based trade at a time where these principles are under increasing pressure. With the World Trade Organization finding itself at the defining crossroads, we must work to prevent further erosion of the system. And this is precisely what we have done with our vision for a fundamentally reformed WTO, which we put forward in January ahead of the 14th Ministerial Conference in Cameroon in March. This is a long-term vision that aims for a system rooted in predictability, fairness and flexibility. And it's about a time we take a fresh look at the balance of rights and obligations agreed 30 years ago, which is no longer in tune with the global trade landscape of today. We are now in the process of establishing a key grouping of WTO members that wish to push for reform to see how best to move forward. Turning to steel. Our proposal to reduce steel quotas by 47%, to double the out-of-quota duty to 50%, and to strengthen traceability via the introduction of melt and pour requirement are all vital to protecting this strategically and economically important industry. I'm therefore very happy that yesterday I could have attended the first trilogue on the steel measure last night, and the Commission remains committed to facilitating a swift and smooth conclusion. If you allow me, I will finish by touching on the two other key pieces of legislation. First, I'm very pleased to see the vote earlier today in this committee in favour of the trilogue outcome of the FDI screening regulation. This is an important step towards further reinforced public order and scrutiny across the EU. And similarly, after protracted negotiations, we should all celebrate the conclusion of the new GSP framework, which underpins our trading relations with 65 countries across the globe. It was vital that we found a way forward to ensure continuity and predictability for these trading partners and for business. So, honourable members, as you can see, there is a lot happening in our joint work at the moment, and I am really grateful for the continuous cooperation on so many key files and for the permanent exchange of views and for your support in what was indeed extremely intense year in the global trade policies, but also in a European trade offensive. So I'm very much looking forward to your questions and to our debate. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Maros. And now give the floor to the political groups. And Jürgen Borbam is the first for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Sefcovic, for your introduction. And let me start off by congratulating you on all the active negotiations that you both have concluded in the Commission and also are ongoing. It looks really promising, more promising than from a very long time. Maybe to say something on the Mercosur agreement, since you mentioned it as well. And I mean, there have been a lot of call for provisional application. EPP, of course, supports this. We know that business and business organization supports it. There are also other political groups that support it here. We know that the Mercosur countries are moving fast on this issue, and Council have given its clearance. So I can only send the message that I hope that it will be provisionally applied as soon as possible, because, especially as you said, it is very important that we now get all the wins and the benefits and the growth that we need with this agreement. We have fought hard for it during many years of negotiation, and now businesses need it, and it's also needed for good-paying jobs in Europe. I'd like to also take the opportunity to bring up the WTO issue, and not least the most favored nation principle. You had an op-ed in Financial Times earlier this year, and it created some turbulence of what the Commission really means when it comes to the MFN. So maybe I'd like to give you the opportunity to clear out some of the issues and what you're really aiming for here. And then turning to industrial policy, we have heard about the proposed Industry Accelerator Act, which of course clearly is an ambitious effort to reinforce Europe's industrial base. But I must admit to have some concerns regarding elements related to European sourcing, public procurement preferences, and local content requirements here. My question is, how do we make sure that we find the right balance between, of course, strengthening Europe's industrial capacity, but also maintaining our openness? Our agenda has been openness and rules-based trade and making sure that we have that competition, that investment from other partners. And why should we switch our agenda now? It seems like we are adopting the agenda that some of our trading partners is doing, and I don't think we need to do that. Let's stay on track. Let's stay open for business and for more free trade agreements and more diversification. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Katrin van Bremt.
Thank you very much. And happy to see you. I know you must be extremely busy, Maros. And let me start by a very positive note. If I listen to you carefully and everything that's in the pipeline, everything that has been done and everything that's in the pipeline, both on economic security, where we start to work in the Parliament as of yesterday with the report of the rapporteur, but also mainly, of course, the advancements in the FTAs. Let me mention India. You know, India. It's not. If you look to the trade agreement with India, it's not the top-notch. Indonesia is, but it's an opportunity, and you see, we need to grasp that, and I think you will find a lot of support in my political group there to advance, and I hope you come quickly with these agreements, because we are eager to work on them, and it's I know you agree, and it's not easy to get your administration maybe fast enough, but it's extremely important if we have an agreement that it comes fast to the Parliament. then we shouldn't do what we have done with Mercosur, but let's not go there. I do have to switch to the United States, of course. It's the event of not the day, not the week, not the month, but of the last year, and it will be the event of the coming year. And I think we are a little bit in a different mood there, and I understand that you have to defend it, but I do want to explain as well where we are as a political group and how we look at it. We were not happy with the agreement at all from the start. We said it's not an equilibrium. The one has 15% and we lowered to 0%. Because they threatened more than 20%, we didn't think it was a good deal. We were ready to work on that. And our rapporteur, who's also a chair, did an extremely tough job, and he had an extremely tough result, mainly on steel and aluminium, where we from the start said, you remember, a few days after Turnberry, they already violated the deal, already violated the deal. After that, other violations came. And you have to understand how we feel about it. When he started violating the deal by threatening with tariffs on Greenland, we said, this is it. And now here we are with the court. And one of the arguments of the Commission, I really want you to comment on that. One of the arguments of the Commission was, no, this is a good deal because we have the 15% and nobody else in the world has it because they have 15 or more on top of the WTO normal agreements. So that gives us that advantage, and because of that advantage, we go to the 0%, and we also promise them to do this and that. That's no longer the case, Maros. There is no advancement anymore. There is no advantage anymore. It's all a level playing field. Maybe that's the good news. It's all a level playing field. So actually, we don't have to go to 0%. And I don't think we want to. What we ask you is to go back to the negotiating table and make a real good deal, or a deal where we have respect for one another. Last point, and then I finalize on China, because what we should really be working on, and you mentioned this, is of course China, because the threat coming from over there is real. And so my question is, you said I'm in constant touch and we're dealing and wheeling. When will we deliver on what? When we will deliver on what when it comes to agreements with China?
Thanks a lot. Inigo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will speak in Hungarian, so if you don't mind. Thank you. Tisztelt elnök úr, tisztelt biztos.
Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Chair, thank you for being here. These are not simple times we are living. It's not business as usual in trade policy either. Let me start with Mercosur. This is something that has been causing us a lot of headaches. The Commission, if they had acted differently 5 years ago or 6 years ago, then the situation would be very different. However, we are where we are. It's a fact. Now, I would like to ask the Commission to be the guardian of the treaties, not only in theory, but also in practice. And the treaties tell us how international agreements must be strengthened, fortified. The Commission should negotiate based on the mandate it receives from the Council, and the Member States accept that with a qualified majority, and then the European Parliament must reinforce the agreement. And I would like to ask, and with all due respect, that this is something the European Commission should comply with as the guardian of the treaties. And if this European Parliament, with a majority, requests a legal position from the European Court, then the Commission should wait for the result of that procedure. That is the minimum. That in any decent legal community, that's how you should act. Now, there are interesting things in the Commission. The Cyprus presidency did not put to the vote an already prepared proposal because some member states exerted pressure on them. And even though there was an agreement in Council, the case did not go forward. I think that is a major political faux pas. It's an error. It's a mistake. And there are ways around for the Commission. It has the authorization to do this. We would like to ask Commission not to use these workarounds, because that will upset the decent cooperation between the institutions laid down in the treaties. My second comment on the agreement with the US. Our companies, sooner or later, will need legal certainty. They will need to know what they will be facing. I understand there is a sense of urgency that the Commission is facing. What we should see the figures, we should see the numbers. We don't know what the numbers tell us. We don't know what percentages of tariffs will be on anything, any product. And I would like to ask the Commissioner to fight for Europe, including your Vice Commissioners. And in some other issues, I feel the Commission is trying to be acting more rationally and is giving up on some issues that have been causing undue delays. And this seems to be a more pragmatic issue. Thank you for that. And please confirm that trading policy from now will be about trading and less about green and other agendas that are not part of the trade policy of the EU, because you have to create opportunities for our companies.
For you, it's Karin Karlsruhe.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Maros, for being here with us today. Today, we mark 4 years of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and we have to ask ourselves, have we done everything possible to stop Putin's war machine? Have we done everything we can to support Ukraine? Unfortunately, the answer is no. Trade is both an economic lifeline for the war-torn Ukrainian economy and one of our most important tools for speeding up Ukraine's integration into the EU. Initially, the EU did the right thing. We introduced full tariff-free access for Ukraine through the autonomous trade measures. Since last summer, however, we have gone completely in the wrong direction. First, we removed the ATM regime and worsened Ukraine's access to the EU market for agricultural products. Then we promised that Ukraine would be able to trade steel tariff-free, something we are now in the process of taking away through the new steel tariffs. Let us stop that. And still, 3 member states maintain special import bans against Ukraine. Commissioner, this situation is unacceptable. And I really want to ask how the Commission, how you will handle this urgent issue. If we truly mean what we say when we claim that we will do everything we can for Ukraine for as long as it takes, we cannot continue like this. We are talking about a country that fights for our freedom and security and that is soon becoming a member of the internal market. The Ukrainian economy is under high pressure and Ukraine needs trade and aid. And I would like to take the opportunity to say that it's a shame that some member states blocked a 90 billion euro support package to Ukraine. And it's a disgrace that Hungary is taking the support package as a hostage. And I wonder how colleagues from Hungary can be proud of themselves when you put not only Ukraine but the whole Europe at risk. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Karin, for this clear message. Now for the Greens, Anna Cavazzini.
Thank you very much. I also want to start with the USA. I think it is actually, of course, a very good decision that the Supreme Court confirmed what all of us has been saying from the beginning, that these tariffs are illegal. And on top of that, they're also highly unpopular in the US. They also didn't create more jobs. And also, as unfortunately now, they didn't create more stability, because we know that Trump announced already additional tariffs and also additional investigations. So I think it is very good that this parliament did not vote today. And let me be very clear, I think before we can vote here in this parliament, we don't need only rhetorical commitments by the US that they stick to the deal, because clearly the actions at the moment show differently, but we need like black and white on paper that there is a solution for the aluminium and steel, and that there will be no additional tariffs to what has been agreed in Turnberry. So this I find very important. Secondly, I also want to actually touch upon the Ukraine, but in relation to investment policy, because we have seen that there is a lot of cases or threats of cases when actually we apply sanctions on the basis of old ISDS treaties that are still in place by some of the member states. And we all know, and we have a very common approach here in this European Parliament, the Commission has a very good approach saying that with the grandfathering regulation and also with our new rules, the member states should actually renegotiate or terminate the old bits. And again, we see how dangerous they are, because we are threatened now by Russia for our sanction policy. This is outrageous. So I wonder what the Commission is now doing to have real action vis-à-vis the member states and make sure that these old BITs are either getting renegotiated or terminated. And then I have a last question on the India FTA. Probably you can say a little bit more on the sustainability parts, because my feeling is they're very, very weak. But I read in the Q&A of the Commission, I mean, we have not seen the text yet, that there is an additional climate agreement. Probably you can, or like a climate MOU, whatever, you can elaborate a little bit of what that is. And the last question on India, can you make sure that India will be still possible to produce generics? Because we know it is of utmost importance for any country in the global south, for African countries to get access to this medicine. Otherwise, we will have a huge health crisis. And this is for me, one of the most important topics. Thanks.
Thanks, Manon, for the left.
Thanks, Mr. Commissioner. I'm going to speak in French. I don't know how fluent your French is, but feel free to listen to the interpretation. Merci, Monsieur le Commissaire.
Thank you, Commissioner, for being with us here today. I'd like to start with a question that is quite simple. And I think I've asked you this question already. So I'd like to have a clear answer. Are you not trying to get rid of the Parliament? I'm asking that because you have tried to get around national parliaments when it comes to free trade agreements such as Mercosur, and now you're trying to get around our European Parliament when it comes to adopting this free trade agreement, which is the worst possible free trade agreement signed by the European Union, and it's going to involve many tons of beef and chicken, and nobody here has voted for this agreement. So what kind of democracy can this be? Worse than that, there was a vote in Parliament. It was a vote to go to the Court of Justice of the European Union, and they intervened a couple of weeks ago. And so I think that your stubborn approach with regard to this agreement is a double mistake. First of all, it's a political mistake, and it's the first time that we've had this type of FTA implemented without any vote from any parliament, but it's also a legal mistake. And I know that often you attach a lot of value to these European agreements for reasons such as austerity, but there is a rule, a page looking at rules, and so I'm going to read part of that out. Article 218 of the Treaty of the Functioning of the European Union is very clear with regard to this procedure here and the obligation of involving the European Parliament at all levels. Quite clearly you haven't respected that rule, because you were really confirming the provisional application of this agreement without our European Parliament having had its say on the subject. And that very same Article 218 confirms the capacity of the European Parliament to go to the Court of Justice. Now, once the Court of Justice has actually been handed the file, and that if they decide that the Mercosur agreement is incompatible with the European treaties, how are you going to justify the provisional implementation, not only without the vote of our Parliament, but also with regard to a part of an agreement that is not legal? Now, I'd also like to remind my colleagues here, now how indeed can you be satisfied that we have this type of agreement without us having had our say? You might agree with me or not, but at least we have this right, a democratic right. And I'd like to just finish up with regard to the agreement with the United States. Now, maybe I didn't hear properly. We've just received a great slap in the face from the United States with the court now in the United States having said that this is an illegal agreement. And so you say now, no, we're going to implement it anyway. Donald Trump has slapped us in the face and you're actually turned the cheek so he can slap the other cheek. Now, I think that what we want here is you want to have an FTA with Australia, Philippines, Mexico, whatever. And you're never questioning the FTA with Israel. And so I think, Commissioner, that beyond political agreements that we might have, and there are many of them, but what is really difficult for us to accept is the whole business about the variability of the rules that you apply.
Dear colleagues, we invited also the chairs of committees which are also related to trade policy, and luckily the Agriculture Committee is here with us with the Vice Chair, Norbert Linz, and I give him the floor for 3 minutes.
Yes, dear Chairman, dear Commissioner, we all recognize the indispensability of international trade, especially since the EU is a major world exporter and notably a major exporter of agricultural products. However, we must admit that EU trade policy is also a matter of concerns for the farming community. This fear seems well-funded because production conditions and costs in parts of the world cannot be compared to those in the EU. Competition is sometimes distorted. The agriculture sector has also been severely affected by the upheavals caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and it's now impacted by the US trade war. Under these circumstances, EU trade policy attracts criticism, in particular from farmers. It is sometimes seen as not defending their interests. The agreement currently being negotiated with Australia certainly reinforces that skepticism, at least among our producers of beef, lamb, sugar and rice. So, therefore, the Commissioner, in your opinion, how should the EU Union's trade policy evolve to maintain free trade while meeting the expectations and address the fears of many farmers?
Thanks a lot, and Maros, from my side, 4 points. First, of course, I have a different view regarding the United States and the breaking of the agreement. For me, it's clear that the United States have broken the agreement several times. Some weeks after the deal of Scotland, they introduced the lifting from 15 to 50% of the so-called derivatives. And this is harming, day by day, small and medium-sized enterprises in Europe. And I can invite you, come to this company and explain to the people there that they are losing their jobs because they are not able to export to the United States anymore. And we have the Greenland issue, and then now we have tariffs, which are much higher than the 15%. For cheese, for example, it's not 15 anymore, it's now 30%. So, totally different view. My question is then, of course, Maros, you mentioned there will be some clarification, and so, in my point of view, at the moment, there's no guarantee. What is the format of clarification? It's a written letter, post from the president on through social. What is the clarification? And when will it come? So this is important for us. Second point on Mercosur. Argentina will finalize the work on Friday, likely. And they will notify it next week. So what will we do?
What would you like me to do?
I would like to go for a provisional application, no doubt about. And this is important because, as you know, Argentina is negotiating also with the United States, and it's clear that, for example, the question of GIs is also in the portfolio of the negotiations. So there is a kind of urgency. So what when will you do? Thirdly, we discussed this also in Nicosia quite recently. The time between finishing of an agreement and signature and then transmitting to the parliament, sometimes it's 2 years. And this, I never understood how this could happen. Translation and legal scrubbing, 2 years. You have some ideas to really speed up the process. Perhaps you can elaborate this as well, so that we are in a time where sometimes in a week more happen than in previous times in decades. We should also quicker in the process of finalizing the agreement. And fourthly, Maros, there are more and more the so-called mini deals. The SIFA with Ecuador, the raw materials partnership, the investment partnership, and I have no clue what else. So what is in your mind for further mini deals? Are you having some specific countries in the perspective, and when will some mini deals come on the table, and how will the European Parliament be involved? First round for you.
Thank you very much. Question is where to start. If I should go in the orders the questions been presented, I'll try to group them. So let me maybe start with Mercosur, because it was the first question asked by Mr. Warborn, and I would say Madame Van Brandt, Madame Dury, bien sûr, Madame Aubry raised this question, as well as Chairman of the Agri Committee, Mr. Linz. I think that also in my introductory remarks, I was describing how important this deal is for European economies, and how much of the very clear economic opportunities we have lost only in 5 years, only in the last 5 years. I'm sure that several of you visited Mercosur countries, and I believe that you would agree with me when I will be describing to you cultural proximity, well, I will be describing to you strong historic ties, and also wish of these countries to work as closely as possible with us. On top of it, huge complementarity of our economies, where we see that what we export they actually need, and because we've been simply not there present enough, they're getting it now from China, slowly reducing our share on the market. And on top of it, they have what we need: critical raw minerals, and of course the access to the big market. So I think that let's not dwell on the past, but there was a lot of missed opportunities in the past, and we should have done this deal years ago. And we would not lose the 10% of our exports to China as we did, because we didn't have the free trade agreement. So what we are doing right now is that we are actually catching up. But the good thing is that all our projections, if the Mercosur deal is in place, that by 2032 we'll be back in the situation we had 10 years ago. We can get back our share, we can consolidate our investments, we can start completely new chapter in cooperation in the critical raw minerals, and simply open new opportunities. On most of the products where Europe is very strong in exporting, from machinery down to agri-food exports, the tariffs being more than 35%, and they will go to zero. Only on tariffs, our exporters will save 4 billion euros a year. That's a lot of money, especially in these days. Not talking about simplification of the trade, not talking about all the guarantees which the investors are getting through this agreement, and not only talking about the fact, which I believe it will be very important for our farmers, is protection of our GIs. Mr. Lange, you are absolutely right. The United States do not like our GI system, and of course they are questioning it, and they are talking to our free trade agreement partners and having question about the GI protection. And therefore, I think that we should kind of positively respond to the fact that all Mercosur countries, despite the tough time we really gave them over the last 2 years, stop and go, very tough safeguards. If it comes to agriculture, really very strict quotas, full respect of our food and safety standards. And then, of course, that we thought that we would be able to conclude in December, and we needed a couple of more weeks to do that. So they really demonstrated strong willingness to work with us as a strategic, real partner, and I think that we should clearly respect it. Indeed, Argentina most probably will be the first one to conclude the ratification. Other Mercosur countries are coming next, and therefore we are, of course, reflecting how to proceed. I disagree with some of you who said that we are depriving the European Parliament of the vote. No, it was not us who sent it to the European Court of Justice. You could have voted on this agreement. You decided to send it to the European Court of Justice, which I fully respect. I fully respect it's your right, but I believe that you will get the answers which you already got in the case of Singapore, because the questions are very similar. So it's kind of delaying tactics which might delay the ratification by the 2 years, and I honestly think that in this case it would be very unfortunate to pile other hundreds of billions of euros of the lost opportunities. Therefore, we are consulting with the member states, we are consulting with the members of the European Parliament. Thank you very much, Chairman Lange, for a very clear statement. And I just would like to say that when Mercosur countries are ready, we will be ready as well. But let's continue these consultations with member states, with you. But I think we cannot let this chance to slip through our fingers anymore. Then, if it comes to second question of Mr. Barb on WTO and MFN principles, indeed, the article in Financial Times brought attention to our submission. It was our intention because we wanted to start honest debate about what we need to change in the WTO. There was a lot of questions about China. There was a lot of questions about how we use our trade defense instrument. And of course, there is one underlying cause for most of it. And these are global overcapacities. These are unfair trade policies. These are state subsidies. These are different non-transparent interventions from the state level. And of course, it has dramatic impact on the trade. So the MFN agreed 30 years ago, based on the principles that we are open because you are open, and we will be trading on the level playing field conditions, is not there anymore. So we just want to start the discussion, how can we actually balance these rights and obligations with a new reality? That if you are not a fair trader in all the aspects, what kind of impact it might have on the fair agreements. Madam Carsborough was referring to our safeguards on steel. I can tell you that for me as a trade commissioner, this is pretty difficult, that when we have an issue with overcapacity, if we want to respect the WTO, and we have to go through erga omnes principle. So even the countries who are not causing the underlying problems of the overcapacity has to be kind of hit by our measures in the same way as anyone else. That's the WTO approach if you want to respect international law, which is paramount for us. Therefore, we just want to put this issue on the table. I know that we will not be able to solve it in Cameroon. But I think that if we start to honestly discuss this issue, how to bring the balance in the global trade, how to bring more fairness in the WTO mechanism, I think that is very important. And I would say, speaking about the balance, the same applies to industrial accelerator. act, where we are currently discussing within Commission how to find the proper balance in making sure that we can protect the European industry from unfair competition, how we can make sure that European public money will be there first and foremost to support the European projects, and how to respect our international obligations, and how also to protect our coveted relationships with our free trade agreement partners. That's the balance we are seeking, and that's on what we are working in the European Commission. Madame van Brent was asking about India. And I would appreciate I would appreciate also your comment, which was very much and very well seconded by Mr. Lange, on how long will it take us to approve all these agreements. And I can tell you that it was not only in Nicosia, I also presented in the official sitting of the Trade Ministers' Council that we cannot afford to do business as usual. So if we kind of conclude the negotiation, which sometimes lasts many, many years, even though over the last year we managed to find a way how to accelerate all the ongoing negotiations. Nevertheless, we are usually talking about the years. But once we finally, after strenuous and tough negotiation, conclude the deal, for me, it's simply unacceptable in the current situation that we would wait 2.5 years before these agreements could enter into force. What is the problem? Of course, one of the issues is legal scrubbing, which has to be done by both sides. And then, of course, we are talking about the translation into 24 languages. So what I was suggesting to my colleagues in the Trade Ministerial Council, we are, of course, respecting all the languages, and the agreements will be always published in official journals in all the languages. But I think that we should start the proceedings in English language, because it would make it much faster, much easier. We would not lose the time, and we are not depriving any single linguistic group, any single official language from any rights, from any kind of legal position in that regard. We had a preliminary discussion of that, where I think there was a support for this approach from the Council, but I know that it was that we are not there yet, because the language questions are always a very challenging one. But I hope that in this we could be pragmatic, and we can really achieve much bigger or much better results. If you allow me, I would then continue with China, then go to Ukraine, and end up with the United States. And India, yes, you're right. So if it comes to China, I mean, the last year deficit with China is 360 billion euros. So it went to the growing level again. And clearly this is not sustainable from the medium to long term. And we are also faced with different figures, even from official sources like IMF, which actually presented a study that 4% of the Chinese GDP is used for different kind of state subsidies or state support for export promotion. And of course, in this case, that is then very difficult to compete on the level playing field. So all these are the issues which we'll be raising with our Chinese counterparts. And on top of it, we are using our trade defense mechanism. We are well over 200 cases where we are using TDIs. But here I also would like to say that in the framework of our economic security discussions, I think that we have clear understanding in the Commission, and I had it from you as well, that we have to look in a way how we can speed up the process as well. Because again, if you want to be totally diligent to our rules, so investigation might take more than a year. We need total detailed study. We need a complaint coming from the company, or we can do it ex officio. That's a process which takes a lot of time and very often misses, I would say, that opportunity to act when it's really needed. And all these issues which I mentioned will be, of course, discussed on the top level with my Chinese counterpart. If it comes to Ukraine and Madam Kausberg, I want to thank you for your absolutely staunch, relentless public support for Ukraine. I mean, Ukraine is very lucky that they have you as their rapporteur, and I fully understand your strong push in that regard, and especially presented today, where we have this very sad anniversary, 4 years since Russia illegally invaded and attacked Ukraine. At the same time, what is very important is to keep a public support for our policies towards Ukraine. And I think where we presented our proposals for new quotas for Ukraine in the case of the most sensitive agricultural products, we did our very broad consultations, and we focused only on a narrow group of the most sensitive products in the field of agriculture, where it was very clear that our farmers are at very difficult situation. We negotiated with the Ukrainians. In the end, there was agreement on these quotas, and I think that that was the best we could do under these circumstances. If it comes to the steel, yesterday we discussed it in our first trialogue, and the fact is that in some of the products, the increase of exports of Ukraine to Europe came from up more than 50%, and that again is something which is just pointing out that the steel sector in Ukraine, despite the terrible war which is taking place there, is very competitive. And again, we have to respect the WTO approach and treat everyone erga. As what I promised you yesterday, what I stated here also very clearly, we would do our utmost within the margins which we have of the international commercial law to treat Ukraine as close partner, as our FTA partner, and look for the best possible solution for them compared to those who do not have such an agreement with us. And if it comes to United States of America, which was the question raised by several of you, I know that many of you didn't like the deal, but to be honest, I never heard any alternative solution from your side. What was the choice? To have this deal or to go to the trade war in August? Would you be praising me if I would tell you in August that, okay, negotiations failed, we are entering the trade war? Would you be happy if you would see that factories are closed, jobs are lost, and we have a dramatic turn for worse in our relationship with the United States? You are criticizing this deal, and I understand that it's absolutely right. But look also at the numbers. If you look at the numbers, our exports to US actually increased over the last year. If you talk to many of the industries, they prefer this solution than the trade war. And I think that we have to look at it not only from the point of view of elegance of the agreement or the framework, but also what does it do on the ground? Are our people better or worse if we have this joint statement or not? And I know that our opinions are diverging, but we're also talking a lot to the companies, to the workers, and of course to the European leaders. So what is happening right now is, of course, another stage of what is, as I said, extremely demanding and challenging relationship management. But I have to say that on Saturday morning, I got a phone call proactively coming from the United States, where they've been telling me, look, we have this ruling of the US Supreme Court, and I want to reassure you that we are going to stick to our deal, that we will respect the deal if you would respect the deal. Therefore, you heard me in my introductory remarks that we both have to stick to our bargain. Of course, what is now ahead of us, this is the transitional period where they are figuring out how to deal with this really landmark court ruling. And we are talking every day. Just before coming here, I had another phone call with the Commerce Secretary Latting. Yesterday, I spoke twice with Ambassador Greer, and I am very vocal about what is very difficult for us. For us, 15% all-inclusive is a deal. And I know that 10 plus more than 5% is outside of the deal. But I also understand that they need to figure it out themselves, how they would operate in this new environment, and that we have to simply bring you more information, more detailed information. And I would still plead that we should also stand to our side of the bargain. So if you would have a vote in the March plenary, what would happen? Thanks to Mr. Lange, you have quite a few safeguards. I think you call them 5S. Then the trilogue starts. So you have all the options as a co-legislators to amend the agreement, to vote for it, not to vote for it, or to present your opinions. And I'm just pleading with you, let's go to that stage. And by then, I believe we would have more information about the derivatives, because I got the reassurances from our US colleagues that they know that this is a big problem for us, and that they are looking into this matter, and hopefully we will be having a better news in that regard rather soon. But I think that we should approach this from this angle. I also have to say that the picture is not black and white. When we had the crisis with the legacy chips last autumn, I was speaking with Scott Bessent 3 times a day until the problem was solved. And I was asking him, once you will be talking to your Chinese counterparts, bear in mind that in this one, the supply chains are transatlantic. And they did it. We had 2 very important sessions on the critical raw minerals, on our bilateral agreement, on the plurilateral agreement, where we want to break the dependencies on monopolistic suppliers. So, I mean, it's not only about I would say the one aspect, but we have to look at it in all general aspects. I'm not going to elaborate on geopolitics. On India and the question of Madame Cavazzini, and Madame Cavazzini also had a question on investments. So on India agreement, I think you're absolutely right that when we had the summit in India, the free trade agreement was a very important element of it, but there was also the discussion on EU-India strategic agenda, cooperation in defense, but also cooperation in the environment. And we established, based on the Memorandum of Understanding, EU-India platform for cooperation and support on climate action. And this platform will be launched in the first half of this year. And that is why you have seen an announcement of 500 million euros in EU support over the next 2 years in the press release for India's efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emission. So this is the initiative which I think we should welcome, and it would definitely help to promote even further cooperation on climate actions between India and the EU. On generics, promoting the access to the medicine is important, and of course we are very attentive to it. And we have agreed with India to include the same level of protection of regulatory data as a TRIPS agreement. And this provision aims to incentivize innovators of medicine to invest in research and innovation. And on top of it, our FTA also contains an explicit recognition of the Doha Declaration on the public health to ensure that the TRIPS flexibilities can be fully used by both parties. And if you allow me the last point, which is very technical but very important as well, you would understand that it's difficult to comment on the position of individual member states, but the Commission clearly expects that our member states will continue the close coordination with the Commission services regarding the bilateral investment treaties with the Russian Federation and the Republic of Belarus, with a view to bringing them in line with the Union's investment protection policies. In the meantime, the EU sanctions regime includes measures introduced to add extra procedural safeguards against any damages claims and arbitration, such as those based on EU member states' bilateral investment treaties with the Russian Federation. And therefore, regarding the complaints, the responsible Commission services will provide an assessment and reply accordingly. Of course, it's very difficult to prejudge the outcome of such an assessment, but then you see the process is ongoing. And Mr. Chair, last point, because this agriculture was mentioned so many times, and I think that Mr. Linz already left, but I still would like to make one very important point, because I spent quite some time with our farmers, and I believe that it will mutually very enriching discussions. So one point which I shared with them is that European Union is agri-food export superpower. Nobody exports more food products than us. It's 235 billion only in the last year. And on top of it, we are very good at that. Our surplus is 64 billion euros only for 2025. When I was talking to Mr. Corman, the head of Irish Farmers Association, he proudly told me that 5 million of people is producing proteins for more than 40 million people. I think he later corrected himself that it's 50 million by now. So I think that if you look at that, what is very important is to create this new market access for our agri-food producers, because there has to be demand for this production. And if there is a demand for this production, these 3 million jobs which depend on the agri-food exports will be preserved. So therefore, I hope that we will also look at it from this perspective, and therefore I appreciate and always accept the discussion on these topics with farmer associations and with the agri-food industry. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thanks a lot, Maros. Second round. This time I will start with, again, the United States. So the alternative, trade war or deal, is not our alternative. We always said, regardless if we like or not like the deal, we are sticking to the deal. And I guess also our American friends can look to the compromise amendments we worked out after a long process with different political groups. And these compromise amendments, you mentioned the 5S, so everybody can look to that, is in the frame of the deal. We're sticking to the deal. And we hope that the United States is also sticking to the deal. That's a question. They are doing it not. They are breaking the deal. And yeah, you mentioned you hope that we have better news. Hope is good. But security is better. And if you can guarantee something, I would really accept it. But at the moment, of course, I'm also an optimistic man, no doubt about. I'm from the north of Germany. We are all optimistic people because of the storms and the wind and so on. We have to be. But just to have hope is not sufficient. And secondly, you mentioned they need time to figure out how much time. What is the time limit to that? And secondly, you missed my question. What the next mini deals will be?
I have it.
Okay. So, 2 minutes. Barry is the first.
Thank you, Chair. Like you said, last July the Commission secured what was, particularly in comparison with other blocs, a good and balanced deal with the US. And I welcome your acknowledgement today that the US has reassured you it stands by that agreement, and your confirmation too, I would say, that the European Union will not seek to capitalise on the court's decision. That's important. The latest US Supreme Court ruling is noteworthy, but we have to deal in realities. And the reality is, whether we like it or not, this administration is clearly committed to tariffs and to continue to find ways to sustain that system. So what we need now is absolute clarity that the good deal reached in July remains a good deal here in February, both in substance and in spirit. So the message is clear on our side that we stand by our word, as the Chair has said, and this good deal remains a good deal, and the carve-outs remain, and the negotiations around steel and aluminium and spirits will continue, and we expect you to do your duty in relation to those issues. Our exporters, particularly in the agri-food and advanced manufacturing sectors, require predictability. They cannot invest on or trade on the basis of rolling legal improvisation, and a rules-based EU-US partnership must rest on clarity and mutual confidence. So, crucially, in light of your stated intention for the Parliament to vote on the deal next month, and I would agree and propose that we do so, and I acknowledge what you've said in relation to the opportunities that exist for members of the Parliament, for their representatives, who can, during trilogue, may fulfil other thresholds of certainty that they require in order to proceed with the Turnberry Agreement, which, as I said, is a deal that we can stand over. And in comparison to other blocs throughout the world, notwithstanding the improved figures that you referred to in relation to our exports, only signify that, and we move ahead at pace, therefore, as a result of same.
Thanks a lot. Nina.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, for joining us today. I appreciate your time and keeping this committee informed and our members. I would like to start off with the UK. Could you give us an update on the progress of the SPS negotiations, specifically on the timelines, whether there's a timeline for concluding, and is there any stumbling blocks appearing? Getting agri-food deal with the UK over the line will be a huge step for cutting red tape for Irish farmers who were most acutely impacted by Brexit. And secondly, a specific issue on EU steel safeguard measures. And it was raised with me last week during my constituency visit to County Meath. A number of companies who rely on specific, unique, pre-coated steel coil from South Korea have raised an issue of lack of EU alternatives and the potential knock-on impact this has for Ireland's infrastructure delivery and plans there. And if some of the proposals around the quotas and tariffs are implemented, knowing already demand for the product is already above the quota. For me, this is a clear competitiveness issue. So can you outline whether exemptions will be considered where specific steel products are not available within the EU market? Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Julio.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and Commissioner, thank you very much for this dialogue, which reflects indeed the tons of volatility that we have now in the world of trade. European trade offensive, you said, and I support very much such kind of an offensive. And since it is global, I would like to take you to the part of the world that you didn't touch responding to questions, namely ASEAN. And I would be very curious to know what is happening with Indonesia documents, when we get them. Are they coming soon? And I hope they are coming very soon to approval, since this process of, I hope it will be not many months from now, the famous process of legal scrubbing and translation and so on, because we have been visiting, this committee has visited our ASEAN trading partners last year and this year, and I think that it is a self-enforcing phenomenon there. So ASEAN members are looking one to the other, and I think that also Philippines could come this year, at least the signature, of course. And also I think that this would give some ambition also to Thailand and to Malaysia. So finally we would have in maybe not 1 but 2 years, we could have the biggest partners, the biggest players in ASEAN having an agreement with us. So please tell me, give me some good news about Indonesia and then about the others. And please excuse me, I don't want to be unpolite, but I have to go to a meeting with the Chamber of Commerce of the member states. Our chair knows the best, and they are an important chamber, so I will check your answer on the WebEx. Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Thanks, Julio. Udo.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks very much, Commissioner. Let me echo what you said on the Parliament's decision on Mercosur. I share the opinion, and I would be more than happy if this House would request from you to take action. But I don't think it's an accident. I think this world is full of contradictions. This is full of different informations, full of distrust. And sometimes happen things like that, and they can happen again. And therefore I have 2 very concrete questions. Do you share the opinion which I came to, that our trade agreements are not only about tariffs, growth, economic benefits, but rather more and more about legislative collaboration, because by doing so, we open corridors with like-minded partners to negotiate something which is more than positive in a totally chaotic world to bring back reliability and the rule of law into trade relationships. If you agree to that, could you secondly provide this committee with an overview in which and to what degrees in which our collaborations, whether that is trade agreements or whether that is investment, the mini deals, like in South Africa, which was very successful, to what degree and in which way we open this door for legislative collaboration so that we can build on that and pursue this avenue of collaboration on equal footing. I think this is one of the most dynamic elements, but it would be good to have an empirical insight from your services.
Thanks a lot. Ms. Lexman.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I'm running in between the two meetings, and we don't have trains like in the US Congress in this parliament. But hopefully we'll still have trade with the US. First of all, thank you very much that the Indian deal with India is not including agriculture, because I think we are avoiding a big problem which we have with Mercosur, and I believe that it's very important that the future deals will more focus on issues which are of mutual benefit, because otherwise we can end up in a problem like we did with Mercosur. But three quick questions. I'm not sure if there are quick answers. First of all, combustion engines. There is this revision. We are not very happy with the revision proposal of the Commission, or at least in my group. And I'm thinking if we will now, it will take too long time, that we will not be able to stop the influx of the Chinese electric vehicles into our market and protect our companies. So what do we do there? Because I believe that the result of the revision of the combustion engine, the ban of combustion engine, is still a very long process which enables China to influence our markets. Second, the Chinese export control of critical raw materials. We have legislation access to critical raw materials. How successful we are to invest and help companies which invest in critical raw materials to mine and process. And second, there was a meeting for all partners in the transatlantic world in the Washington, D.C. 2 weeks ago on access to critical raw materials. If there is any results for the EU and any cooperations which we build in this result. And the third question is when it comes to the Goshen investment in Slovakia to build electric batteries, because now we have this environmental issue with Samsung batteries, lithium batteries in Hungary, and we do know that the Goshen factory did not provide proper information for the environmental impact assessment. They were practically lying on the chemicals and amounts of the chemicals. And I'm wondering if the Commission is following this process, because we might end up in another environmental catastrophe in Slovakia. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Gabriel.
Thank you, Chair. In Spanish, I'm very brief. Gracias, Comisario.
Thank you, Commissioner. I fully share your comments on Mercosur and the importance of it. The European Parliament, from my point of view, made a serious mistake in renouncing its prerogatives and leaving decision-making up to judicial bodies, which are removed from the political decision-making. It's curious, as you say. But in this case, at least we've decided that, at least temporarily, someone else will be making that decision. I was going to ask you whether the Commission, in parallel with that mandate, will apply this provisionally. And if I were asked what the Chair asked you, I would also say I'd apply it immediately. But I would also say we would apply it when the Mercosur states are prepared for it. My question then would be, if we're going to wait to apply provisional measures until everyone is prepared and has notified their ratification instruments, or would it be possible to apply it gradually? given that some member states are much further along than others? Thank you.
Wow.
Vielen Dank, Vorsitzender Lange. Thank you, Commissioner Sefcovic.
Wow, deeply impressed.
Commissioner Sefcovic, questions on 3 topics. First one, US tariffs. You'll need the crystal ball for this one. What do you think President Trump will do next? This is my attempt to try to provide President Lange with a clarity and assurance that he needs. Because one thing is sure, he will not remain with the solution that he has now, because what the Supreme Court outlawed last week was the tariffs imposed through IEMPA. The other ones don't allow them the discrimination that he needs. The Section 122 measures are across the board. The biggest beneficiaries of the change at the moment are Brazil and China, which are 2 of the countries he wants to hurt the most. So he'll do something else. So what do you think he'll do? Because your answer may provide part of the clarity and the simplification that President Lange needs. Second issue, Industrial Accelerator Act. We had a quick exchange of opinions on this in the last plenary, you may remember. This act, we already know, we're going to have a lot of political tensions between groups and even within groups, between countries. But it's the classical dilemma between protectionism and free trade. And you know, your own DG Trade will not see eye to eye with DG Growth, for instance. And the issue will be, what is really strategic for Europe? What deserves to be protected? Where do you draw the line? And even if it's a very difficult political question, the answer is technical, I'm sorry to say. Which are the sectors that technically we cannot live without, or which are the sectors that we can be blackmailed with by our former partners, enemies, I don't know, who can force us to do something that we didn't like it happened last year, because we were too dependent on certain things. Where are we going to draw the line? What is the political process? Third topic, Mercosur. Not on just a provisional application. I urge you, the Commission, to do that. Mr. Lombard was very, very clear about that. I second his words. I'm going to do something. It's a pity Madame Aubry is not here yet, because her outburst forces me to have my own outburst. Because provisional application, I'm not going to discuss the deal itself, but the provisional application, those who are against the provisional application, the only arguments they use are formal or legalistic arguments. It's the treaties, it's the role of Parliament, it's the procedures. Fine, that is of great importance to us. We are guardians of that. But those that are for the provisional application of this agreement are talking about the economic benefits, cultural affinities, geopolitical necessities, things that matter to the people outside and their day-to-day lives. And that is why some people outside look at this parliament and ask, what's the parliament for? Can it be overridden? Can it be ignored? Perhaps it can if all it worries about is legalistic and formal things which do not care for the people. I still remember the time when the left cared about the real well-being of the people and not just formalistic or legalistic arguments.
I think that, Nico, you want to come in again?
Yes, thank you, because Madame Karsbo was really very harsh and very seriously attacking my country, Hungary, and including Hungarian MEP, so I have to answer and clarify just the facts, Karin, just the facts. So how the story started, in January, the Druzhba pipeline was injured by the Russians and repaired. So oil supplies delivery could have started, but Ukraine is not doing it. And let me quote that for Ukraine, it is not optional. They have legal obligation to supply. I'm quoting the EU-Ukraine Association Agreement. It's Article 276, Paragraph 1, Subparagraph B1. Each party shall ensure that transmission system operators take the necessary measures to expeditiously restore the normal operation of such transit or transport which has been accidentally interrupted, reduced, or stopped. There is a clear legal obligation. But we are pleading the Commission for weeks now to mediate and to ask Ukraine to fulfill its international obligations. So you forget how the entire story started. And the Commission is not doing it. That's our problem. Somehow we had to react because the consequences in Hungary would be extremely difficult. Soaring energy prices even more. Risking, not Europe, as you were saying, risking our own people. So somehow we had to react to this injustice, into this illegal action by Ukraine. So please do not forget how the story started. Thank you.
Jürgen.
Thank you. Since we are marking the very unfortunate 4-year anniversary of Russia's illegal and full-scale invasion of Ukraine, I'd like to bring back the topic on the steel file, since you also mentioned you had trialogues yesterday on this one. Less than a year ago, the Parliament adopted a position, or together with the other EU institution, giving Ukraine preferential treatment for the steel. That was something that should be valid up until 2028. But with the steel file, the proposal from the Commission is to take that back. And this is what we also have voted for in the committee. And I think it is a bit unfortunate, and I'm just raising this because I think in the trialogue it will be important for all institutions that are now negotiating to take into consideration that we did not have a plenary mandate when this went to trialogue. It was only in committee level. And I think there are quite a number of MEPs that think this is problematic. First, we gave Ukraine a preferential treatment so that we can support them in the war against Russia. And now, less than a year ago, we are taking that back. I think that is problematic from a moral basis. And I hope that this can be changed in the trialogues so that when we vote it in the plenary, there will be a very strong support for the steel measures. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Anna.
Dziękuję, panie przewodniczący.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner, for all the information provided. I would like to ask 3 questions. The first thing on the Mercosur deal. I would like Mr. Commissioner to explain us one thing. When one Mercosur member states, let's say Argentina, ratifies this deal on Friday and notifies the EU about it, then the decision of the European Council of the 9th of January is going to be published in the official journal of the EU. When can we expect that this agreement will provisionally enter into force? Is the vacatio legis a deadline of 2 months? Does it apply? The second question is about Australia. When do you intend to finalize the agreement, and what are the quotas, in particular on the beef and sugar? And my third question is on Ukraine. Poland has introduced an embargo on the import of food and agriculture products from Ukraine. So if the EU cannot defend member states against unfair export from Ukraine, then the member states have to do it, because the Polish farmers are unable to compete on unfair rules against the Ukrainian farmers. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And Anna, again.
As I spoke already, I will be very brief. Colleagues, and also you yourself, Commissioner, have already mentioned the Industry Accelerator Act. Let me just add my opinion or my perspective on it. I know why there is, of course, also hesitations, and there can also be a backlash. I completely get it. But I would also say, if I look at our economic security, and we discussed this yesterday here in this committee, and also, the behavior of some of the global competitors like China, I think we have no other choice in also making sure that we create and boost demand for some of our industries in Europe, and not let highly subsidized, highly overcapacity products basically ruin all of our companies. So I think I get your hesitations, but I would say it is really important that we also really speed up our European demand, and think this is one of the most important tools we have. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. So I have no further request. Woody.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I will speak in Dutch. Commissaris Sefcovic, de eigen diplomatieke...
Commissioner Sefcovic, the EU's own diplomatic service has said that the new Israeli measures in the West Bank clearly violate international law. A lot of experts have said that this is a de facto annexation of large parts of Zone C. The opinion from the Court of Justice says that the Israeli occupation is illegal and affirms that third countries, including the EU, have a legal obligation not to have any economic or commercial ties that would allow Israel to maintain its illegal presence. Each time the EU simply reacts with declarations and letters, that is not going to make Israel change direction just because of articles in the press. We have rules that unfortunately are not being properly applied, so I wanted to ask some questions. When will the Commission have specific measures, and when will they act to stop these violations of international law? Will the Commission be proposing measures to stop trade with the illegal settlements? If that is not the case, on which basis can the Commission argue that its current policy is in conformity with international law, especially if we look at the International Court of Justice ruling from July 2024? Does the Commissioner not think this is a hypocritical system when it comes to only applying international law for certain countries? Does this not weaken the credibility of the EU and the economic security agenda? We had Russia annex Crimea in 2012. At that time, all trade with the occupied territory of Crimea was stopped. So we should also stop trade with the illegal settlements.
Maros, 23 minutes to answer.
Very generous, Mr. Chair. Very, very generous. So I will start with the answer which I forgot to provide you with in the previous round concerning mini deals. First, what was the reason and what was the purpose? I mean, we've been discussing in the first part of our discussion that to negotiate a free trade agreement is enormous effort, and it takes sometimes a very long time. And I think we have agreements which, like Mercosur, will be negotiated more than 10 years. I think we started with GCC countries 32 years ago. So it's not something what is happening overnight. And in this, I would say, new dynamic world, we've been looking for what could be new products on the DG Trade or the Commission shelves to address some of the elements which we would like to target more specifically and avoid the heavy procedure of the free trade agreement, which has to follow the templates, which has to have numerous chapters. And if you look at the printed free trade agreement, I have one in my office, the simplest one with the New Zealand, and it's a bulk like this. So therefore, I think that what we intend to do with this CEFA and CTIP agreements is to kind of be much faster on the ground and to offer the better possibilities for structured cooperations with the country, and it was very much welcome. I was negotiating the CTIP agreement with South Africa. There are much thinner documents. They're very much focused on the concrete areas of cooperation, and we, of course, always like to bring it, if possible, down to the level of the projects. So that was, I think, the purpose of concrete CTIP. And I know that, for example, Vietnam, despite the fact that we already have the free trade agreement with them, they're also interested in CTIP because it has a specific nature for the project support. If it comes to CEFA, this is sustainability in investment facilitation agreements. I think we started with Africa. I think Angola was the first one, if I recall correctly. Now we recently concluded the negotiations with Ecuador, and when I had the Ecuadorian foreign and trade ministers in my office. They very much appreciated that we decided to go in this way, because they knew that also from the point of view of administrative capacity and complexity of the negotiations, this is much easier for them to reconnect. What we would like to do next is that if it comes to CFAs, there is a strong interest from Egypt to have an agreement of that sort. So we are kind of pointing out and scoping what should be, I would say, the parameters of this agreement. And of course, we continue to keep Parliament informed about all these developments. Maybe we can discuss bilaterally what would be the best way how to proceed. Should we inform you on a, let's say, regular basis if there is some kind of developments, or to go, I don't know, in some kind of concrete questions which might come from your parliament. So there is absolutely no problem to share with you all the information and process in the negotiations, and also agenda for the future, because we do this because it's simpler, it's faster, and it's very much welcomed by our partners. And we want to be present in Latin America, in Africa, in Asia, and sometimes to go through the whole FTA process as you discuss here. It's very complex process. So let's discuss further how to increase the parliamentary scrutiny here. We're absolutely fine with that. Then I think that there have been questions from Mr. Mato and Madam Brilka on Mercosur and the legal possibilities of provisional applications. I very much appreciate also this debate, because it already gives me the sense where lie the majorities, what are the opinions in the European Parliament, and I am of course gathering the same, I would say, intentions and from the Council. So legally, what is possible is that indeed we can provisionally apply the Mercosur agreement from the first ratification with Argentina, which would be like happening probably already this week or next week. But in that case, what we would need to do, the European Union and Mercosur countries, would be to finalize the technical regulations and adaptations to this provisional application only to one country of Mercosur. And until we would be done with that, I think that other Mercosur countries will also ratify. So these are, I would say, the questions we are currently looking at, because we want to see what is the timeline in ratification processes in the Mercosur country, and what would be the most efficient and fair way how to proceed. But we are looking at that. But as I said, we still need to complete the political assessment and deliberations how to proceed in that regard. That, I think, I got the question on Australia. I am just looking where it was coming from, but nevertheless, the most important, I would say, is the question. So on Australia, this is, I would say, again, country with whom we cannot be more aligned from the perspective of respect for the values, geopolitics, and complementarity of our economies, language proximity, and you name it. And also, I would say, this mutual feeling that we need to do much more together, particularly in this very difficult geopolitical time. So I was very happy that after the meetings which we had in Melbourne, in Australia, where I have to say that it was New Zealand and Australia who invited us as partners to the CPTPP. It was under the Australian presidency, where they proposed it to the partners. I'm talking about 12 countries of CPTPP, and they've been extremely helpful in making this happen and creating this partnership which EU TPP countries represent today. We are talking about 30% of the global GDP and 40% of the global trade. So if this group works together, it has a huge impact on WTO processes, on how the trading is done, how the global supply chains are formed, and on top of it, Australians, they have all the critical raw minerals we need. They need investments, expertise, cooperation, offtake agreement, and so on and so forth. So it's really a lot to do. Of course, we are fully aware of the sensitivities of agriculture in these regards. Therefore, when my counterpart, Senator and Foreign Trade Minister Don Farrell was here, I believe that we closed on most of the, I would say, industrial parts. But of course, the agriculture part is always very, very sensitive, as we have seen also in this afternoon's discussion. And therefore, we need to continue our discussions and negotiations, and we are talking on technical level. We will again resume with the Minister Farrell, and I hope that we will be able to land this, because I think it would be good news for both Australia and European Union. Then if it comes to the question of Mr. Lange, I'm coming back on US. So what would be the time of the transition? So what we hear from our American counterparts is that, of course, the transitional time is very clearly framed by maximum 150 days, because this is how long this so-called universal tariffs could be applied based on the article or section 122. So within this time, we should have definitely much more clarity. When I was talking to my counterparts yesterday, today, they believe that it could happen even in a shorter period of time, 3-4 months. And they're, of course, going through the whole process of revising the whole system. So I think the court ruling happened on Friday. Today we are on Tuesday. So I understand that this requires some time, but the communication between us is a very, very, very intense, and it will continue. It will continue like that also in the future. I mean, if it comes to questions of Mr. Cohen, who was also referring to US, I very much appreciate your statement on the fact, which we also put in official communication of the Commission. The deal is a deal. That's our firm line in that regard. And to get there, we went through rather complex negotiations. And you would probably all recall, because I think I was also in your committee several times at that time, we've been offering 0 for 0. We've been ready to go for the full elimination of the tariffs. But that's not policy the United States of America under this administration supports. So it was clearly that after we tried everything possible and impossible, that was that end. So we had to look for other solution if we wanted to avoid trade tension and eventually the conflict. Of course, the wines and spirits, of course, the derivatives are permanently on the agenda, and we will continue to push for that. What I just would like to avoid is to kind of create pretext for some in US to say, look, I mean, you are not living up to your commitments. Why you are pushing us to live to our commitments? I think that we just simply have to be kind of fair to meeting the bargain on the both sides. Madam Carberry was asking about UK. Yesterday we had another session with Nick Thomas-Simons, who is Minister responsible for the relationship with the European Union. I have to say it's a pleasure to work with Nick, and I saw how his political steer helped to resolve many issues from the sensitive areas like citizens' rights. We are not 100% satisfied, but the progress under his leadership and steer in that regard is very much welcome. And I believe that first and foremost, the beneficiaries are the European citizens who are living in UK and who are the right benefactors of the withdrawal agreement. And he's bringing the same energy to what we would like to see as 3 deliverables for the summit, which now most probably would be organized at the beginning of July. And of course, what would be the best way forward if we can have indeed agreement on SPS, if we can have agreement of linking our ETS systems, and what is very important for you and for 20 plus member states, to have a solution for the youth experience, where we have to find the way from our side to address the tuition questions, and from their side, I know the possibility for young Britons to work in the European Union. So these are, I would say, the three fundamental questions. Of course, if it comes to these negotiations, they are very complex, because very often they have or financial implications, or in a case of SPS, but also ETS, the dynamic alignment element. I very much appreciate that the UK side is not kind of disputing this approach, but they are also bringing to the table the sectors which they believe could be exempted or not covered by these agreements. And this is what we are discussing. And of course, more you go into the detail, more complex it is. And therefore, we agreed with Minister Nick Thomas-Simons that we would be in bi-weekly contacts just to provide the political steer, so we can have, I would say, these three important agreements, which would clearly improve not only the atmosphere but make our relationship closer. You know that I was working a lot on the Northern Ireland Protocol, and when we've been discussing the steel, I think one very important element to say there is that we would respect the Northern Ireland Protocol, and we find a solution for the steel sector which would fully respect all the specificities of the economy of the island, and we are working on that with also our Irish and our British colleagues. Then if it comes to the overall question of the steel, I would say the whole philosophy behind the steel safeguards is the fact that we didn't take this decision lightly, because this is the most important decision how to safeguard the US steel which has ever taken. Our calculations are very clear. If you want to have steel produced in Europe, we have to reduce the import by 47%. If we do that, by 2030, the European steel sector will have a growth of 1.4%. So we are not greedy. We just want to make sure that in these geopolitical times, when we want to produce more arms, that we are able to rely on our own steel production and not to develop another dependency of bringing or importing the steel from abroad. It's very difficult, it's challenging, but what we did, that of course our close partners, our FTA partners, our strategic partners, that we will do our utmost to reflect that quality of the relationship in these new arrangements, which will be negotiating in full accordance with the WTO procedures, as it was acknowledged by Dr. Ngozi, Director General of WTO, when we've been discussing this with her in Nicosia last week. Mr. Winkler was asking about Indonesia, and I just would like to tell you that there is our joint goal, and I know that for Indonesia this is absolute priority, to have this agreement enter into force next year. Of course, what is the challenge here is exactly what you all been pointing out. I very much appreciate your political support for accelerating the processes, simplifying them, and make them as quickly as possible. We're very happy to transfer this political support also to the Council services, and I believe that together with the Member States we'll find a way how to make these procedures much faster. He was asking about the ASEAN countries, so I was mentioning Philippines, Malaysia, and Thailand. I believe with all three of them, with a little bit of a political will and courage, we can complete the FTA agreements within 2 years. Of course, the region-to-region FTA, it's a little bit more complex, because there are also the countries in the region with whom currently we do not have very intense relationships. So then if it comes to Mr. Bullman's question about the legal cooperation, I think here we would be very happy to discuss this with you, because I believe that FTA, as you rightly point out, it's not only about the market access. I think we made it, sometimes I say, a little bit more complicated for us, because we put a lot of emphasis on respect for human rights, respect for climate policies, respect for Paris agreements, and many of them we want to have essential elements in our agreements. But it has much more than these elements in it because it gets the countries closer. Of course, it forces us to work on common standards because we have to respect their standards where we export there, and they have to respect our standards. So, of course, this is one of the topics which is always discussed. And I think this is also bringing us closer to each other in all the, let's say, international frames like the WTO. But we'll be very happy to explore what more we can do in that regard. Madam Lexman was asking about India and saying that agriculture is not included. I would disagree a little bit because the agri-food products are included. We just avoided sensitive commodities and sensitive products. And I think that was the crucial step which was taken at the beginning of the year because it allowed us to kind of focus on what is essential and to, let's say, not to create the bad blood on the commodities where we knew that it will be almost impossible to proceed. And in the end, everyone is very happy with that solution. On combustion engines, as you know, this belongs to my other colleagues. But what I can tell you is that indeed the exports of Chinese EVs to Europe are growing despite of our countervailing duties. And we are now monitoring very closely the increase of plug-in hybrids, Chinese vehicles, and that's another area which we would need to discuss among ourselves, but also with our Chinese partners. And on the MOUs between EU and US, so there are two tracks which are happening right now. First one, there is a discussion of MOU between EU and US on the cooperation in the field of critical minerals. This is headed by the State Department in US, and my colleague Stefan Sejourne was representing Commission in that discussion. And then there is this plurilateral agreement, which I would describe as a G7 plus. Under plus, I mean India, I mean Australia, and there are I think Korea and other countries, where we are discussing how to increase the demand in our markets in a way that it cannot be kind of fluctuated by another big actor. So we are discussing price floors, offtake agreements, and other mechanisms we can use to simply stabilize the prices. Information negotiation factor, if it's kind of being studied by the Commission, I do not have that information. I can ask and provide you with. Mr. Cotrim de Figueiredo was asking about IAA. Here, I think the work really continues because this is again, I would say, absolutely new approach to how to promote the strategic sectors of the European industry. We are clearly working very hard to find that appropriate balance, but it's very clear that we want to respect our international commitments, and when any measures will be proposed, that they have to be based on the robust economic analysis. And I can assure you that for me, it's very important that after we invested so much efforts in having these FTAs, I would like them to be fully respected also by these proposals, and this is what we are working on. I think that these been, I would say, the questions. I think Mr. Rudi Kennis was asking about the question about Israel. Here, I can only respond to explain that our association agreement with Israel does not cover settlement because they are not part of the Israel territory, according to our law, which we fully respect. And banning trade with settlement would require adoption of the restrictive measures through CFSP sanctions, which requires unanimity. And you know how the situation in the Council is in that regard, and therefore I think the measures which we have been taking on some of the union programs, being the measures which we could take on our own, and we did what was, I would say, the most appropriate at the time. Dear Chair, you've been very generous with me. You give me 2 minutes more. I really appreciate it. But I would like to thank you for the opportunity not only to answer, but also to listen to the points of view and the questions of your members. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Maros. Thanks a lot for being here for 2 hours and have this discussion and stay in contact. Thanks a lot.